Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Topanga Collective podcast. We have another guest today. I feel like November is our guest month. It feels like maybe end of October, all through November, we're just having guests everywhere, all at once.
So many guests.
And this is one that is very dear to my heart because it is my mentor within this industry, Alexander Gryszunski, who I met when I was very young in Poland at a film festival. And he brought me on the first ever big Hollywood film set where I was able to shadow him as a DP. He talks about many things.
Yeah, if you have seen a movie, you have seen Alexander Gryszunski's work. He shot The Craft, he shot Tremors, he shot Emily in Paris.
Season 1, some of the episodes, yeah.
Yeah, so we're really excited to have him. He did try to dissuade Indy from becoming a DP.
In my own best interest.
Thank God it didn't work, because now we can have him here with us today. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, everybody.
We're excited.
We're really excited. Today we have a guest.
Another guest.
Alexander Gryszunski.
Alexander. I was going to say Alex. I had to stop myself.
Okay,
Alexander, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Background, schooling, films, anything you want to share.
Well, I was born and raised in Poland, which made me qualified to show you around.
Yes.
When you were there.
Agreed.
And but irony of it was that that movie that I was shooting was the very first time ever in my career that I actually worked in Poland.
Wow.
Amazing.
Because I left my family and I emigrated pretty early, so I was actually kind of raised in the not movie business because there was not much business about it, but my father was a screenwriter, and so I kind of had a chance to experience movie sets when I was little, and it kind of fascinated me, which I guess was the reason why I eventually decided that this is the career that I want. So, but anyway, so a long story short, I left, and then my family moved to Copenhagen, Denmark, and that's where I went to film school. I got accepted to film school and had my first career in Scandinavia, and then I got a little claustrophobic and I came to America, and that's kind of the short version of it.
Mm-hmm.
But well, I don't know how specific.
I mean, the thing to mention too is Alexander. I almost say Alex, sorry, but Alexander is both a cinematographer and a director.
Okay.
Well, no, I am cinematographer. Well, that's how I was educated in film school as a cinematographer. Mm-hmm. I have committed some films as a director, but
committed.
Well, I mean, it's hard. Well, it's my day job is a cinematographer. Director, and this is something we also can talk about, is because those two functions are kind of overlapping each other quite often. Yeah. So as a cinematographer, through the collaboration with various directors, you also kind of learn the tricks of the trade, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you also learn how to not to do certain things. Actually, that's another thing, that you actually learn from mistakes more than from actually, and specifically but from other people's mistakes. Mm-hmm. Much it's much more solid learning experience in something that you can use in your work. And actually, in fact, we had this conversation yesterday. I went to a screening of a movie, and I shouldn't mention the title because that would be unfair, but it was very taxing experiences of something that's very difficult to sit through.
Oh God. Okay.
And then we talk about it. This is actually sometimes it's really great to see movies that are failures, not so much. I'm not talking about box office, because that is
A whole separate thing. Yeah.
but as far as the craft and how the story is told, as opposed to how should be told, and that kind of gives you a lot of ammunition, so to speak, in your own work. So, but anyway, so yes, I have directed, and I think it's also very. Even if you don't have ambitions as a director, it's very good. It's kind of character building, so to speak, to direct. I was in film school in Denmark, and then I, after I graduated, I was first doing a lot of documentaries, and then eventually I gravitated towards features. Although in places like Denmark, you never commit 100%. It's different than here. It's like when you, even if you're a feature film cameraman, you still do a lot of other things, and documentaries. So I've been doing both for quite a while, and I actually thought also, speaking of experience, it helps both ways. If you do documentaries, if you have a feature film experience, that helps you with the documentaries and vice versa. So so it's also I love the kind of this dynamic, the changing dynamic between feature films where you have working with hundreds of people. Actually, in Denmark, it wasn't hundreds; it was much smaller. But and then when you go from there to a documentary, when you just 3 people. And in fact, I just had that experience because I did this documentary.
He directed a documentary.
Yeah, and shot it.
And shot it.
Wow.
But anyway, so it's kind of teaches you ability to come up with quick solutions, because there's constantly something that happens that you didn't take into account, that you have to, solve quickly, because otherwise you're not gonna get the footage that you wanted to get.
Yeah.
And so doing, I always, it's kind of unrealistic here, because in America those borders are very, boundaries are very defined. Very few people actually do both here.
Yeah, it's true.
So if you documentaries, you're documentaries. If you features, you're features. Or if you commercials, you're commercials.
Commercial, yeah.
So but the experience is good to try everything, and that because it helps you with every genre that you are dealing with. So
was the transition from the Denmark market to the United States market difficult for you, or did you find it pretty easy?
Well, it is difficult because it's about trying to make a name for yourself. Right. I didn't come here with a movie that got the 2 ways of doing it. Doing it most European cameramen who do end up working in the States are here because somebody noticed their work in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the case with me. It was actually what happened. Do you want to hear?
Yeah.
You want an anecdote? Okay.
Tell us.
So I was doing a documentary in Arizona about survival schools, which is
wow.
Well, that's actually very very up in times subject. I was supposed to go and shoot a documentary in Tibet.
Beautiful.
And something that this director, producer, and I developed that project together, and we worked a very long time to put it together, and then get the financing and get the permission from Chinese government to actually get there, and it was very complicated. And I was supposed to fly directly from here to Beijing, and from Beijing to Lhasa, Tibet, and right after I finished that project in Arizona. And so I got to LA, checked into a hotel. I was supposed to be here for a couple of nights. And then we got a message. I got a message that there was some problems with visas in China, and then that we kind of have to wait it out. There's and then it turned out that there was some riots because Tibet was and is under the Chinese occupation, basically. So there was some demonstrations that turned into riots, and then the result was that the Chinese wouldn't let anybody from foreigners to come in. And so those couple of nights turned to a week and then like a couple of months later, I got a call that somebody actually wanted to offer me a film, a small, very kind of
Indie
low,
film?
indie, non-budget film. But then I was like, okay, well, so that was the reason. So the fact that I never made it to Tibet actually in a way determined my career here in the States.
So then you ended up here and continued to work. I mean,
well, for a long time I was going back and forth,
Yeah.
but this is how it kind of started.
yeah. And you have a pretty impressive career to talk about, I think. I mean, Alex knows that. He's smiling. But I will say that it is impressive.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Indiana. Just popping in here to chat a little bit about cinematography for actors. It's an online course platform that Haley and I created to teach the technical side of performance. As a cinematographer, I've noticed that the difference between newer and seasoned actors isn't in their ability to perform, it's in their ability to understand the technical requirements of them on set. Our goal is to help you, as an actor or a newer filmmaker, feel confident when you walk onto set. We release new classes monthly, and you'll also find tons of free downloadable content. Now, we recommend the most affordable option, our subscription, where you'll have access to every single thing we put out, including bonus materials, existing classes, and classes as they release monthly. Our listeners can use code TTC Podcast for 20% off a monthly membership of the entire collection. That's TTC Podcast for 20% off your card at checkout. Okay, back to the episode. As a cinematographer, it's really difficult to do, day exteriors, working in like the hot desert. I know we talked about that. And then you're doing like ensemble crap.
We did actually talk about it in a slightly different perspective. Is that because I always get this Tremors things, which turn out to be,
cult followed
cult film, and now it's not just here. Like anywhere in the world I go, the local crew is like they first like, oh, there's another schmuck coming here, and then it's like the next day they're like, oh. Hi, so you shot, because then they like look you up at
your credits.
IMDb, and then they're like, oh my god, you shot Tremors, really? And that's one thing. But then it's like it's not a movie that I'm necessarily too proud of, because it's most of it is day exterior. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's day exterior. It's like 90% of it is day exterior. So like anybody can like just turn on the camera, stick the light meter out and
go to 16.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's actually much more complicated, because you by design have no control of elements, and if you have to sort of create a continuity of the movie takes place over 2 days, and so there has to be certain continuity of light, and you get none of that in a desert. It's so it was just and also that what added to it was that we were dealing, this is pre CGI time, so all these underground creatures they were physical creatures. They were not,
It's amazing.
they were not computer generated.
Yeah.
And they, so they would they spend hours digging them into the ground, and they were like supposed to like jump up at you, and those pistons didn't work, and then so they only worked for take one, and then you had to do a take two. So they had to
reset
and
and the light.
and then it's like I'm looking at the sun.
the sun go change shadow completely.
Oh my gosh.
So it was just the most stressful thing ever, and the result was that I actually after that my only criterion for doing the job was if there was no exteriors, so it's like
the next one you're like all interior, all control, all yeah. When talking about something like Tremors, and then you go into The Craft a few years later, was it a few years? And that's female ensemble cast, right?
Yeah.
And that is a completely different approach, I would imagine, as a DP than it would be to something like Tremors.
Yeah, that's a lot of night interiors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stage.
Yeah. And
there's always this vanity component to it.
Yeah.
And and actors, in most cases, kind of, obviously want to look
good,
their best, because it also kind of, determines their careers.
Yes.
I mean, that's very. But then, of course, there are some, depends on the material, and it depends on the part, the characters they play, and but yeah, I mean, there's this. I think that's probably what you want to talk about is the rapport that you are supposed to, that you want to, not supposed to, but want to forge with your stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And and here, I guess it's fair to say that a lot of female actors, they very self-conscious, and they and they kind of want to make sure that the person they work with do justice to their
looks and
their
visage
visage.
coming off.
and so you're very aware of it. If you're not, they make you aware of it. So it's so it is very but it's a fine line, because it's not like, I mean, it's obviously the case. It's justified when you do commercials and stuff, but that's not necessarily justified when you do narrative films. So that's something that you have to be cognizant of, and this is where the whole sort of triangle collaboration between you as a DP and your director and the everybody who is on the other side of the camera, on the right side of the camera, as opposed to the wrong side of the camera.
Yeah.
So that's a very loaded question, because it's this is where the area of responsibility is not really well defined, because everything, like as a DP, you deal mostly with tangibles. You know that your responsibility is lighting. The camera, choices of lenses, and the movement. Something that you obviously do together with the director, but still, that's very specific. But then there's another kind of dimension to it, which is where, to what extent can you actually communicate with the actors?
Yes. Yeah.
And then, as a lot of directors are very sensitive about this, for partly because directors by design are captains of the ship. At least they think of themselves like that. But also it does, in fairness, it's also the question of that too many voices on the set are distracting the process, the performances and stuff. So, again, you kind of, it's about psychology and diplomacy. It's kind of like after a while you realize that that's what you have to learn, those skills, communicating skills, so you come across, but you don't come across too strongly, so it alienate your relationship with the director, and kind of become a little loose screw in the process, in the whole machinery of filmmaking. So that's something that I guess is a personality question, but regardless of your personality, this also comes with experience, I guess. So it's like you learn to tiptoe, and then still it's also actually one thing that I left out here, because I'm talking about myself as DP, but then there's of course the camera operator, and then there's that has his own his own interest in having a good communication with people that are in front of the camera. Same goes for focus puller, which is also something that good focus puller is also. I mean, it comes sort of with the territory that they are invisible, right? But they're really a good one. They're also very good at communicating with the actors, because that's a whole the whole thing about hitting marks and stuff. That's their responsibility, and of course this has changed quite a bit with digital and also a lot of it's like moving camera, steady camera and stuff. So the expectation is that whenever the actor doesn't hit the mark, it's kind of your job to adjust. Both as and so obviously if you have a camera on the tripod, there's not much you can do to adjust. The focus puller can, but it kind of changes the whole, the framing, obviously.
Yes.
But when you have more fluid camera with, on a steady cam or whatever else technology available to you, it becomes your job not to screw up the take.
Yeah, and you have to rely more on your crew to fill in.
You have,
the void.
And then so there's a lot of potential. Like I said, it's changing, has changed with the years. But one of the things that is very kind of obvious after a while is that everybody has their defined responsibility. So, say focus puller is not quite sure about the take, and the operator cannot really tell you 100% it was good from the beginning to the end, and he wants another take. He or she wants another take. Well, it happened to be a take where the actor is like, nailed it. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So that kind of creates potentially a tension.
Yeah.
Because if the actor doesn't want to
do
be told that this take doesn't necessarily work, so there's a lot of these kind of a lot of potential points of crisis, on a
between all departments and all places.
Yeah, because everybody is kind of focused on their thing, and not necessarily on it. So it kind of shows you what an amazing kind of art form it is, that everybody is doing their thing, and yet it has to kind of come
just
together.
To get that one take, for the edit.
Come together so everybody is happy, and they don't screw each other's work, and that's something that when you start thinking about it, it's just remarkable how
we're actually able to do anything.
Yeah, and so there's that, and so obviously you have to learn not to get in the way of the process, and still be able to deliver what is, the intention.
A style, like a consistent piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily get any easier, or maybe it does. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but like everything. I mean, it's a a cliche, but yes, it has to do with experience, how you, and and it's also kind of. I'm sure you've met a lot of DPs, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have. I don't know if you, and most of us. It's also an ego thing. They're very strong personalities and stuff, and sometimes it's not that doesn't help.
No,
because you are really need to blend in and not stick out.
Yeah,
stick out. That it just doesn't. It helps your ego.
Yeah,
but it doesn't necessarily help
the film,
the film.
or anyone else working.
The work that you're doing.
So, but anyway, it's yeah, well, I was going to say is that also it kind of what helps is to experience each other's jobs. In Denmark, we had a little tradition on in features where at the very end of schedule, we would spend maybe a third of a day where we would put in a hat, put the roles, and everybody would pick one.
Oh my god!
And then you have to do this. So
That's fun.
That's so much fun.
So you have an actor who now becomes a DP, and a DP who becomes a sound person, and you have probably a little bit of it in film school. But then the film school, that's kind of obvious.
Yeah,
but and there's nothing at stake there.
Yes.
But here it's all of a sudden, and that's just so amazing because you realize, I mean, it creates chaos. I mean, it's total chaos.
Of course.
But it also teaches everybody respect for the craft, for other people's craft.
Yes.
So it kind of was a game. It was fun.
Yeah.
And of course, something that producers hated because it's wasting
time,
half a day.
Yeah.
But
the efficiency. Yeah.
But actually, I tried several times unsuccessfully introduce the idea. It's look at me.
I'd love to see that on a set nowadays. I would love it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But it does sound like a very valuable tradition to have.
Giving people context, for the appreciation.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of like a fun thing. And but it's really kind of educational.
Yes.
So yeah, but
the bottom line is a very hard line.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about the different directing styles you've worked with?
Most of the directors that I work with, well, actually, let me see, because I also work with quite a few women. Women I enjoy actually working with men. Am I crying?
I know, it's so great. Yeah, he enjoys working with women so much it brings a tear to his eyes. Yeah.
But, directors, by definition, most of them are very strong personalities. Some of them are megalomaniacs and know everything better than everybody else. But then these are not the most interesting dynamics. But seriously, the difference is that some people, it depends on their background. There's some people come... actors who become directors, so that's their background. Some editors who become directors. Directors come from different
every walk of life,
and that kind of also shows in their attitude, not only the attitude but also their style, working style. And so there are directors who totally leave the choices to you as a DP in terms of lenses and motion of the camera movement and lighting and stuff. And there's some who are more, kind of micromanaging, who also actually do know their lenses.
I was going to say, have you worked with directors that call out the lens that they want?
A couple of times, yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
It depends on, because, I never worked with... say Polanski, but he, I'm friends with his DP, his most recent DP, and that's like, that's his territory. That's Polanski's territory. Nobody, he uses the old-fashioned director's
Beautiful,
finder, and he decides what lens to use, or he just calls it out. And so there's that. As a DP, you kind of feel that a little amputated. But,
you retreat to lighting. You're like, well, I'm gonna go make this better then. Yeah.
Right. But then there are people who, directors who also tell you how to light it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, there are. I mean, it's a fine line because you sit down and talk about the mood and style, the mood or whatever, and inevitably. He or she tell you that this is, I want this to have a certain.
Oh yes, okay, yeah.
And but then there are. Well, actually, I don't think I ever experienced a director who actually tells me where to put this.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about. No. Yeah.
But I did work again. I cannot really use names, but I did work with somebody, an actor, who would show up on a set, and he would like look up around and say, "What idiot put this toupee over there?"
No.
Yeah. And
oh my God,
that was a person because he was very self-conscious about how he looked, and he knew that the light hitting his face. From that particular angle was not particularly flattering. I've gotten that a couple of times.
Wow.
I really loved when we met and you were telling me, I won't use names, I won't say specifically what it was, but an actor you worked with that was very particular about lighting and camera height.
Right.
And could you talk about that story a little with the grips carrying the thing over? Yeah.
Well, to start with, he's speaking of day exteriors. He said to me at some point he doesn't do day exteriors.
Oh.
And I was like, "What do you mean?"
Okay.
And then he had this. If you ended up doing like a walk and talk, Steadicam and stuff, he insisted on having like grips carrying a 20 by above his head.
Just out of frame.
Yeah. So
God.
Yeah,
to diffuse the light?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
yes,
my God.
But I can't really tell you more because then you
might know who it is.
Yeah. It's let's just leave it at that. But,
so I mean, but the gist of it is that working with different types of talent, levels, or just types of talent, is something that that happens a lot, obviously, and there are ways that we have to navigate that as DPs that are cautious. And subtle, but the relationship between actor and DP varies so much.
It does, but it actually the interesting part is that again it's very hard to leave director out of equation.
Yeah.
But way back before you were born, there was no video assist, right? Uh-huh. And that's where, and I don't want to date myself, but when I went to film school, the equipment we had, the cameras, they didn't have video assist. Yeah. The first feature film I ever did, we didn't have a video assist. What it meant was that the relationship between the DP, well, actually, because also back then was operating, we didn't have, there was no tradition in Scandinavia for operators, so the DPs operated the camera. You were, as a DP, the only person who actually saw the movie in the Finder. Mm-hmm. So you had to, so the director totally depended on you, and not just mechanically, but he or she was standing next to the camera. It was not exactly the same thing. It was still off. Yeah. So of parallax, right? So at the end of every take, the director looked at you and expected you to say
Good.
It was good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about the camera, it was also the performances. So you were like the extension of, there was second pair of eyes. This is totally changed with the invention of
playback and video assist.
Well, first it was video assist, and you know who invented video assist, right?
No.
Okay, an actor.
What?
Jerry Lewis.
Oh.
Wow.
Jerry Lewis was the one who actually.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, that's
invented it. The concept of it, or invented.
He invented. I don't know how involved he was. Yeah, he actually got somebody, a technician from I forgot which company, and they actually came up with the idea of a beam splitter, and that was kind of, I guess, I don't know what motivated him, but it must have had something to do with the ability to judge the performances. And, in the beginning, it was very crude, that the image, the monitors were like, black and white and small, and you couldn't judge much. Well, your performance to some extent, but nothing else. Then it kind of slowly started evolving and kind of took the mystery out of the equation in a way, because what we as DPs kind of lost what I call ownership of the image, and we keep losing it more and more, because then like I said before, it was just performances. So in the proverbial video village, there was not all these voices saying, oh, okay, why does it look this way or the other way? Sorry.
Okay.
So this is something you also don't do on the set, do you? Today, on monitors, what you see is what you get, right?
Yeah.
Of course, a part of the fact that you also still can, manipulate the image in post and stuff. So we lost the territory big time.
A piece of that trust on set.
I actually miss those times, because first of all, you felt much more useful and were getting more respect. People were, and also, another thing which is another kind of interesting dynamic about, that had to do with not just the DP and the director, but the actors, some actors, and then anybody else who was interested in process, is the whole concept of watching dailies. Mm-hmm. So there was this, a certain suspense, after the day's work, and you as a DP were the only person who kind of knew what you
expect,
got. But then the suspense was, well, is the director going to like it when he or she sees the dailies? And so then there's this whole ritual the next day where we would either watch dailies during lunch or at night if people, if you were on location and stuff. And I thought it was just fantastic, because it was also something that would help the process, because you could actually sit and talk about what worked, what didn't, what we can improve and stuff. And it was really creatively such an amazing kind of and that doesn't exist anymore, because everybody watches. Well, first of all, they've seen it already.
Yeah.
But then even they haven't seen it, they watch it on the computer, and there's no dialogue.
There's no really community or gathering around it.
It really helps the creative process.
It broke a certain part of the relationship that you once had with your directors.
Yeah, and also everybody, because it has some sort of, like you said, community sense, but also it helps in your choices the next day.
Fast forward to season 1, a few episodes of Emily in Paris that you're out shooting. When you're shooting something at that scale, comparing it to something like The Craft, was The Craft a big budget, or was it also a cult film?
Well, it was both. It was, big enough, so, we built. It was shot most of it on Sony sound stages, and so we built,
Does Do actors nowadays come with a certain way of having to light them? Is that ever something you have to deal with?
You mean like they come to you and say, I want this?
Or they bring their own gaffer, or they are like, I need eye light every single time, or I can't have nose shadow. I can't, my contrast can't be crazy.
Well, not that way. I mean, people, most women, kind of in jest, but really not. They come up to you and say, okay, do you want to see my good side? Yeah, I mean, it used to be that the actors had to rely on the director's judgment, and they never watched dailies.
Yeah.
Now I think it's changed. They actually, they might not admit it, but they do actually watch dailies because they're available. And an actor sees something they don't like. They don't necessarily confront the DP directly, but they go to the director and say, well, that's just kind of. I was a little disappointed about this, that, and so then that kind of gets filtered through to you through the director. But I mean, I personally haven't really experienced that. I did have, I don't know, it's kind of hard to, with Tremors, which kind of would turn into a joke later, but everybody wants to protect their turf.
Yeah. I do want to wrap things up, but I have a question for you. Newer versus seasoned actors. What differences do you see on set between actors that have less experience versus more experience?
It's obviously the mechanics, the idea that you actually have to hit your marks. Again, I think it's less of an issue in today's world, right? I mean,
yeah. I think what I always say is it's the technical requirements what you're saying, the mechanics, how a film set works, where the camera's landing, what lens you're on, the lighting.
Hey everybody, it's Haley, just popping in here to chat a little about Cinematography for Actors. It's an online course platform that Indy and I created to teach the technical side of performance. Our goal is to help you, as an actor or newer filmmaker, feel confident when you walk onto set. We release new classes monthly, and you'll also find tons of free downloadable content. We recommend our subscription, where you'll have unlimited access to all of our existing courses, bonus materials, and those new monthly releases. Our listeners can use code TTCPodcast for 20% off a monthly membership of the entire collection. That's TTC Podcast for 20% off your card at checkout. Okay, now back to the episode.
So it's also the question of how. I mean, if somebody misses their mark consistently and misses them by 2 feet or something, that's a problem. But then you kind of deal with this. But experience, I think also, it's not just a question of experience; it's also your method.
Yeah.
As an actor, because that's the thing. I don't know where you come from in terms of your.
What's your method, Haley?
Very technical.
Nice.
Now.
But it's that's whole kind of joke, something that always a Marathon Man, Dustin Hoffman, and Laurence Olivier plays this Nazi who is who fled Germany, and the whole Dustin Hoffman plays this victim of he's a survivor, Holocaust survivor, and he's like he is a quintessential method actor.
Mm-hmm.
He gets into the character and he stays in character, not just from the morning to wrap, but for months and months and months.
Mm-hmm.
He just so in order to stay in the character, he kind of does these self-inflicted things that gives that gives him pain and stuff, and sometimes he would like disappear. So there was one time where he just disappeared. They couldn't find him for like days and days, and there was this very crucial scene in the movie, and everybody was like looking for him, and worried that something happened to him and that he won't show up on time. And he does show up, just on the day they're shooting this scene. He shows up on the set, and he looks like shit. He looks like he hasn't slept for hours and days, and just lost 10 pounds and really pained. And Laurence Olivier looked at him and says, "Dustin, why don't you try acting? It's so much easier.
Just act."
Oh my God.
Why don't you try acting? Because he comes from that British English stage, where you kind of deliver your lines, but then when you're done, It's all so it's like complete opposite.
I did hear a story similar to that, where some great Shakespearean actor just was stood outside the backstage door smoking, and the show was going on, and he was smoking and having a conversation, and the light went on to call him to stage. He went, did the most amazing performance, came back out, picked his butt right back up, and finished his conversation, just because they can just drop right in and do it.
So people, it depends on your training, but also your personality. Some people, actors can switch it on and off, and it's not a problem. But some cannot, and that's also where where I was getting at, is that kind of affects the whole mood on the set, and how you deal with people like this, because you always told, don't bother him, just leave him alone, and minimize the
changes happening or the conversation.
Right, but also the notes you give, and the whole conversation about marks and all that stuff. It's like you have to take it to minimum, and also some of it is overreacting, because usually who's telling you this is not the director, but the first AD. Or you produce it stuff, so they kind of create also this
this idea or this air around them.
Semi-paranoia, or this kind of bubble that pointing a finger, the whole thing's gonna blow up. So it's seasoned actors. They have their routine that they don't want to know anybody to mess with, and the young ones obviously are more kind of sponges who want to learn, general terms, but
Alexander, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
No, you've entertained us enough.
We told you it was going to fly by. However, I do want to tell one quick story. We can choose whether we want to keep it in or not. Sure. But you told a story in a previous episode about an old computer and something you did on that old computer. And now I have a story specifically for Alexander. I was very familiar with about 2.5 minutes of your work as a preteen, because we had on my dad's old computer in the family office. There were only 2 videos on. They were example videos for the QuickTime program. One of them was a trailer for The Craft. And I was, I don't know, maybe 9, maybe 10. And every morning for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I would go downstairs and turn it, close the door and turn on the computer as quietly as I could, and just watch the trailer over and over and over and over again.
That's beautiful.
I loved the Morrissey song, and then I also memorized everything that everyone was saying, and I would just say it to myself, and then I'd be ready to face all the bullies at school that day.
So what you're saying is Alexander made you want to become an actor.
Yeah, and made me want to be a witch, and made me want to stand up to the mean girls at school.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us. It was such a pleasure.
Okay, well, thank you.
Always great to see you.